This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Well, as I indicated earlier, I don't think you could drive 1 mile outside of your home and not find some kind of road or bridge construction or renewal or paving or whatever. And I know we often had to sit there, but it was definitely needed. Sitting across from me is Bob Latham. He's the Executive VP of the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. He's our go-to guy on all these things. All right.
Good morning.
Did I exaggerate?
No.
Give us an update.
Once again.
What did happen? What happened last year?
Like we always talk about, what we've done with the funding bill from several years ago known as Act 89, we put a lot of money into infrastructure improvement or rehabilitation, so we're not building a lot of new projects. There's only 1 or 2 new projects in the state. It's all rehabilitating, fixing existing bridges, fixing existing roads. Our geography, our geology, we're old, cold, and wet, and we have to fix it up.
That. Old, cold, and wet.
And you can't do that unless it's under traffic. There's no time of the day when people aren't driving. So unfortunately, it is a little bit disruptive, but we're getting it done. We're putting a lot of people to work. And you can see by the interest in our Commonwealth by the distribution industry. I know you talked with the business folks recently about Amazon and all that. I mean, that's to our advantage. I saw a very interesting piece in the Philadelphia Inquirer looking at Philadelphia area's transportation network as a key component of drawing Amazon in. Right. This is what draws in business.
Now, how much money is actually being spent annually?
On the highway system? Think about this. If we hadn't passed Act 89, we would have been at about $1.5 billion a year in construction. That sounds like a lot of money. But right now, because of Act 89, we're able to boost that to about 2.4.
That's what I was going to say.
And that's getting a lot of things done. We're fixing right around here in the Harrisburg area. We're going to fix 83 from the Susquehanna River all the way up to the 81 split.
But I will tell you something. I drive an awful lot around the state, all over the place, as you do.
Right.
I still see areas that not been touched that need fixed. And we can't have a dilapidated infrastructure unless I'm on Mars.
One of our major arteries is I-81, goes right through from Maryland up to New York.
Yep.
Again, because of the mountainous terrain, topography, and the truck traffic because of its location and its advantage for distribution. Right. That road is obsolete. It needs to be redone from border to border. It would still be a tremendous expense.
All right, let's go to an important topic. As you accurately point out, in 2013, they approved this state law which provided important new resources for roads and bridges. The fact of the matter is that a significant amount of that has been diverted to another cause. We're not going to argue the other cause isn't important, but they're taking money away. You finish my thought here. I know you want to talk about this.
Well, again, Act 89, or the transportation funding bill, was just that. It was not a highway bill. It was not a mass transit bill. It hit every component of transportation: port improvements, pedestrian facilities, bike paths, short line railroad, as well as a big boost in the highway program that I just talked about. So immediately after the passage of that, the legislature started to siphon some of that money away on the highway side in order to fund ostensibly to fund state police operations. But since that just basically augments the general fund. So what they were doing was avoiding what they had to do with the general fund to the tune of now about $175 million a year cumulatively, or about 9 cents of the gas tax. So when people say, gee, our gas tax is high, well, because it's supposed to go to improving transportation and roads and bridges, and now,
but it's being diverted.
And now we're looking at doing it with the other portions of Act 89.
I want to continue this conversation. There's some other important aspects of this that I want to get into with you. We'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, advancing quality, improving lives.
Well, Bob Latham from the Associated Pennsylvania Constructor joins me. I was back in the past segment, Bob, and we're talking about this important subject of it's a transportation update, many features of it. You made a point I want you to reiterate.
Well, the point is that the transportation funding bill was not a highway bill. It wasn't a transit bill. It was a total system-wide bill. So it had money in it. It has money in it for not only roads, not only bridges, public transit, which again, I remind people is in all 67 counties. It's
Absolutely.
not just the Southeast or the Southwest. It's very important as far as commuters and the ability for people to get around. As well as money for upgrading our ports. And we have inland ports on the western part of our state that people don't realize. Pittsburgh is a port, Erie is a port, and a lot of short line railroad money. So when we talk about those types of funds within that bill, those are very, very important projects, which is one reason we're concerned, we're very opposed to the notion of taking money out of those funds in order to balance the state budget, which was the House Republicans' plan. We're opposed to it.
It's not the original purpose of the funding.
Absolutely.
Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely. I mean, that was a bill that legislators debated for 2 years. There was a lot of angst, and at the end, they passed the bill in order to be able to invest in our infrastructure, not to simply say, well, because we got a bank balance over here at the end of the year, we're going to take that money and sweep it over to something else. Yeah.
Now let's talk about, I mean, one of the other things, I don't know if this affects us in the long run, but it's important, and that is the Pennsylvania credit rating. Well, here we go, Standard & Poor announced a credit drop. It's still pretty high, but in the long run.
The point is, I think that if we keep avoiding the issue, which is needing to look at the whole structure of state government. If there are 42 funds or 142 funds that the legislature is questioning their use, then maybe we need to look at how agencies are formed and how they're funded. And I think we have a structural deficit over and over and over again. We have to look at our revenues. Are we bringing enough in?
Yeah.
Are we funding things? I think Gene Barr alluded to earlier the pension issue. We still really never dealt with that. And that's a big problem. It's not just a problem for the state, but for local governments and school boards as well.
Yeah. But I mean, make no mistake about it, and you and I have chatted about this for several years. Putting money into the construction of highways, and not construction, but the repairs on this broad mix of considerations, the fact of the matter is it improves the economy for business. It makes driving and other forms of transportation safe, and we need it for a modern economy. How can you not buy into that? I mean, what possible reason?
Well, I mean, I think it's just I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. But the point is, it is a big improvement in people's quality of life if you can get around town. And again, we talked earlier on the show about some of the strategies we used, which were not concrete and steel, but electronics and ways to move traffic around. And you see that in a number of areas. So looking at mobility and transportation has always been a driver of economies going back to the beginning of time. Civilization located at rivers because that's how you could get around. And so going back to the idea of businesses like Amazon locating where they're going to locate, I believe that they will look very, very hard at transportation and the transportation system and what we're doing with that. And I think one of the things is if they look at, say, well, yeah, you're located well, you got great geography and you've got a great highway network, but now you're taking the money out of the highway system and you're taking money out of the transit system to pay for something else. Maybe you're not going to invest the way we want you to invest.
Yeah, well, maybe we're out of time, but maybe one of the things the president proposed was it $10 trillion into infrastructure?
Well, $1 trillion, but the point, and I think that the news this week.
We're out of time. Thanks for coming. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.